Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Walt O'Malley, the Senior Product Manager for Sizer, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Sizer. What we're going to do today is go into more advanced levels. We're assuming you've already seen basic Sizer tutorial, the NSEN course, in particular, for part of SE Academy. Should be familiar how to log in, build a basic scenario, design a simple workload, and then, just a basic layout of Sizer itself and how to output to a BOM. But what I'll go through then is how to build a more complex workload and then how to analyze the results. And actually, this is what we're going to do. One is build a multi-workload scenario, which is pretty common because most people run multiple apps on a Nutanix infrastructure. VDI, server virtualization is very, very common. A new thing that's coming on is Acropolis file services and then raw input. We do now have asynchronous disaster recovery, so I'll show that, the primary and remote clusters. And then there's a concept in Sizer called automatic sizing, which is the default. Let Sizer figure out what's optimal, but you can tweak things with manual sizing, and I'll go through all that. And then finally, as mentioned earlier, we'll go through space calculations and how Design Brews fits in. And also financial assumptions, so you kind of know and the cost of the solution itself. And with that, why don't we get started? And what I'll do then is show an advanced scenario with multiple workloads, and we'll call it advanced video. But anyway, you have access rights, depending on your roles, to multiple models. But anyway, we'll stick with Nutanix models. And we'll start a scenario. And what you'll see with Sizer, it's really workload oriented. You're going to work with your customer, understand their requirements, and it's all sorts of kinds of workloads. We'll start out here with a VDI, very common one. So let's call it VDI. And then, there we got VDI. You'll see a similar concepts in all the workloads is that we're going to first ask you some very specific questions for that given workload. So a VDI concept would be a broker. View is the most common, so I'll just stay with that. And then a concept we have in a lot of workloads is a profile. So VDI, of course, is virtual desktop, and it's different kinds of users. And so a profile of a user, like task or knowledge, power, or developer. So you see, and what that a profile does is over here is the parameters for what each user gets. So a task worker gets 280 megahertz, a developer gets like 2800, so quite a bit more. It's more of a power user then. But anyway, let's go ahead then with 100 of those developers. Now I can often too is allow to customize, and that's important. So we know a developer, by the way, we work with performance engineering and coming up with these different profiles, so it's not arbitrary, but these are definitely power users. Each user is getting 4 virtual CPUs, and it's really 4 vCPUs per physical. So what this is saying here is each person is getting a whole physical core, so it's quite a bit. And then how much RAM they get, how much user data. I won't edit any of those, but you get the idea. You could edit those. And now we're going to get into more what all workloads will see. Replication factor, our default's 2, but you could go to 3. Whether you're going to compress, that's pretty common these days. Now we usually keep it down to 0 on VDI, but let's go ahead and adjust it up. You could. Advanced features here then is like erasure coding, encrypted storage, block awareness. Not used a lot, but you do have those features as well. So what are we doing next then is we do now have is both local snapshots, but also the concept of DR or remote snapshots. So we're going to do local snapshots, but we'll also do remote snapshots. And what that's saying is put the snapshots in another set of nodes that are in a totally different cluster. So we'll go ahead and create a new one, and we'll just call it remote. So this means that we'll have some nodes in a different cluster called remote. And here's the policy we're going to use. Snapshots every 60 minutes. We're assuming about 5% change, and we're going to keep about 10 snapshots. We're ready to save now. So what Sizer's doing right now is going through 30,000 or so options and figuring out what's optimal on the primary side. And here we go. But also on the remote side. So a pretty healthy need. Remember, we got 100 developers, and they take a lot of cores there. But in the remote side, much smaller, because why? Because all we're doing right now is putting snapshots over there. But at any rate, so that's the first workload. But really at Nutanix, most of our sizings are multiple workloads, 3 to 10 or so. So let's go ahead and add another workload. Let's go ahead with the new thing on the block, the file services. There we go. There's actually multiple use cases. Again, this is like a Windows file server kind of thing, but home directory is the most common. Department shares, application storage as well. We'll just stay with home directory. So we asked you how many users and then how much total storage space. Let's go ahead and change that to say 5,000 GIB, about 5 terabytes or so. And we'll go ahead and now this is a different concept of snapshots. This is about snapshots at the file level, the file services level. And so let's just say we'll do daily, stick with the 2%, let's say it's changed, and we will stay with 7 snapshots retained. Okay, and then now you're going to see the common things we see on all workloads. What's the replication factor? Let's go ahead and compress. We'll go for the full amount. You would have those same advanced features. We'd hit those. And then I won't do any snapshots, but you could do snapshots as well. Okay, so now we've added our second workload. Takes some time sometimes on Sizer, it's going through a lot of calculations. Here we go. Okay, so now remote stayed the same because we didn't really add any more to the snapshots that are on the remote cluster. The cluster one is the primary cluster, and it went up a little bit. So let's go ahead then and add our third workload. This time, let's go with server virtualization. Server virtualization is actually our most popular one. And so this is the ability to have different web apps and things like that, all running on a Nutanix infrastructure. So once again, profiles, but here we're talking about a virtual machine, not a user. So it's small, medium, large. If you can see up here, it's 466 megahertz for small, and almost 4 times bigger if it's large. But we'll go small, and we'll say there's 100 of those. And once again, you could customize that, and that's pretty common, really. I mean, somebody might say, first of all, it's the ratio of how many vCPUs and physical. So each VM is getting 1 vCPU, and that we're saying, look, you could put 6 vCPUs to physical cores. But how much memory it gets, how much cold data, how much hot data. So you can tweak that. And then once again, we're going to get into the common stuff. And let's go ahead and compress 50% there. And this time, let's go ahead and play with DR a little more. So, you could have, if you say this means it's just local snapshots. Here it means local snapshots and remote. Now the other higher level is going to be DR and remote. And what that's saying is not only do you have local snapshots, not only do you have remote snapshots, but you actually have disaster recovery on the remote cluster. I could actually put it in a new cluster, but just keep it easier to see. I'll just keep it in remote. So again, maybe this is a remote cluster in a different data center in a different city, for example. But at any rate, whatever that policy is as far as snapshotting, and we'll go ahead and save that one. Okay. So this got a little bigger over here. But at any rate, okay. So now let's add the fourth workload. Pretty common as well as raw, because I mean we have a bunch of apps, but maybe your customer doesn't quite fit that, but they want a VM, they want to run various applications in a VM. Well, that's where raw kind of lets you dictate what's needed. Maybe you, through tools, whatever, you kind of get to the requirements, but it's going to allow you to then set, well, let's assign so many vCPUs for that VM. How many physical cores? This is basically, it's saying it's given 6 physical cores. Why? Because there's 6 vCPUs, and each vCPU gets a physical core. But you can adjust those. RAM, how much cold storage, hot storage. CVM, of course, is the container VM in Acropolis, and you can assign that. Now, in all the other workloads, we know those workloads, and so we assign it. But here, you're under control, and you assign those. Okay, and then once again, from there, you're going to see the common thing that you can do with Acropolis for any workload. Compress things, whatever replication factors you want. But also then, if you wanted to do any snapshots or something like that. Let's just stay with that then. Okay, so we've done sizing for 4 workloads, and actually they're shown here. I'll go through sizing details more later, but we did a raw, we did server virtualization, so running different web apps, file services, and then virtual desktop for 100 developers. And we figured then is the optimal solution with DR even. So the cluster 1 is your primary, and pretty healthy size because we have pretty heavy workloads there. But we're pretty much just putting some snapshots in remote, so it's a much smaller system. But with that, thank you very much. And the next video then we'll go through the auto and manual, and there'll be a separate video to go through the sizing details and financial analysis. Thank you.